Hey everybody, welcome to another Filmmaker Brunch. I'm trying to do these every single day. This is really more of a lunch because I had a client meeting, so it took me a little bit longer to get to the table today, to the desk today to start recording on this one. Yesterday, I talked about three different casting strategies that I've utilized. Today, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into how we were able to cast Disclosure, our latest film, poster up there on the wall. I want to talk about that a little bit because I think it gives you a little bit better of a perspective specifically about how to cast your film, especially if you're not in California. California can be a little bit easier. A lot of people know actors personally. They can find those actors easily. But if you're outside of California, it's not always that easy to find a community of actors who are really good. So the goal here is to get the best possible cast for your short film that you essentially can, right? And there's different factors related to that. There's budget, there is who's in your local area, there's do you have, again, a budget question. Can I have people travel out to me to participate in my film, be in my film? So I want to talk about a little bit about my experience casting Disclosure because I think that we lucked out in some really key areas and we made some really key decisions that made casting that film a lot easier, not being in California, especially, and me not knowing the local marketplace very well. And I think you could benefit from some of that stuff. As always, feel free to ask questions about our experience. Even if you ask a question, if I'm not live, if you watch the video after it's been live, I will still utilize that question in another video later in the week or later in the month. So definitely do that because it'll help me generate more content, but also help me answer your questions. So the film in question that we did our casting was called Disclosure. It is on YouTube. You can watch it for free. I'm about to share my screen so that you can see it. And I'll walk through a little bit of like what it looks like. But this is Disclosure. Let me go to you'll see like the different cast members that we had on Disclosure that I'll talk about and how we're able to get them. But I feel like with casting, the place where we need to start off with first is we really need to start off with how do you even go about getting to a cast, right? How do we even start off this process? And in my personal opinion, and I, again, started out as a writer, directing is newer to me. I've done producing for almost as long as I've been a writer because if you want to produce the things that you write, you have to become a producer or find someone who is. So the first thing that I would say is that I'm going to come at it from a writing perspective to say the first thing you need in order to have a really good cast is you need to have a really good script. If you have prior films that you've done that you can reference for people and say, oh, by the way, I did this film, that is also really good. But if you don't have a good script to present to them and say, look at this script, don't you want to be in this script? Won't this script be interesting for you to be a part of? It's really hard to cast good people because the script is something that they're all going to see. They're not all going to see your lookbook. They're not all going to hear your vision from you, but they are going to see your script. So if you are a director, find a really good screenwriter to help you really hone in the script so it's really, really strong. If you are a writer already and you're trying to bring a director on, have them understand the script really well before you start the casting process. But I would argue too, what you really need somebody who's a really good producer. So the first thing I would say, get a really good script. The second thing I think you need to have a really good cast is you need to have really good producers. Because producers are the people who know other people, right? Producers are the people that go like, oh yeah, I've talked to that person. I should go introduce you to that person. And then all of a sudden, you can have really good interactions around your script and be like, oh, here's my script. Read it and see if you're interested in this kind of thing. So with my experience, I felt like we had a very strong script. I took that script to Maya Jaram. Shout out to Maya because Maya's amazing. Maya was essentially Maya. I met Maya at a film premiere, which was our film premiere. It was No Vacancy. It was premiering here in Colorado. Maya came to that premiere. I think seeing that film was good because that film is a very high quality film. It's won a bunch of awards. I got some of the awards here in the studio with me. Um, it's won like 12 awards. And because of that, it was easy to have a conversation with Maya. So the first hurdle that you may have to overcome is that, and this was something that I had to overcome because some of my earlier short films, didn't win awards. So the first thing you have to overcome is like, how do people see you as a writer, director, producer, as a quality person? It really helps if they can see something. That's why I said the script is really important. Your script is really important because that's something that they can see and go like, is this actually good or is it not? This is actually why I use screenwriting contests, screenplay writing contests. Say that 10 times fast. That's why I use them, is to get some placements. So then I can go to someone else and say like, oh, this script has a bunch of placements in different contests. I think it's really good. I think you should read it. By the way, if I have a script and I submit it to contests and it doesn't do that well, I don't use it as a calling card, right? But we also had a film, and that film was another calling card that we have. So you can also use scripts and other films that you've done as calling cards. So I meet Maya at this premiere, and she's telling me that she'd like to introduce me to a lot of other people. Now, Maya didn't introduce herself to me as a producer, so I wasn't thinking in my head like, "Oh, this person is a producer," and I'm gonna want to. But she introduced herself as a person that I could quickly tell that she had a very good idea of who in the area was quality and who in the area or maybe people to avoid. And so, what I would say is try to find those people. It's really helpful, especially if you're not in California, although it works in California too, because I've been in California doing the same thing. When you talk to people, get a good feel for if they are a good arbiter, if they know quality people when they meet them. And I knew Maya had that. I could tell Maya was like, okay, I'm not going to waste anybody's time by introducing Jay to people who I don't feel are high quality people. And Maya and I chose to work together for the first time because she is also an actress and works with a lot of other actors in the area. And a lot of actors around here in Colorado are looking for places where they can get involved with more communities. So the first thing we did, and I did this for No Vacancy as well, I think this is a really big deal, get involved in the community and then do a table read. Because Maya and I produced a table read together for Disclosure. And she basically cast the table read. She was like, I know actors who could play these roles. She had read the script. She goes, on the script, I think I can get these people to play these particular roles. So if the first thing you need is a good script, because it's going to kick off all these other things, you need to go and network with other people who are in the film community wherever you're located. The third thing that I would highly recommend that you do is take that script and do a table read with that script. It does a couple things. One, it lets you as the filmmaker understand if the blueprint you have, the script you have, is good or it needs any kind of tweaking before you film it. You don't want to go waste a bunch of money by filming something that is not a good script, because chances are it won't be a good film. So table read is really valuable that way. But a table read is really valuable for casting, because it allows you to see different people in those roles before you start filming. And now you can go, oh, I like that person in that role, but it's not really the way I imagined it in my head. Or you can say things like, oh, I don't really like that person in that role. And here's a really cool thing about table reads that I really like. You also get to start working with people where you go, oh, I really like this person, I'd like to work with them. Or vice versa, I don't know if this person and I will work really well together, so maybe I shouldn't work with them. So have a great script, join a film community, then do a table read, and have some of those people participate in your table read, and have somebody there that's helping you through that entire process. So when we did No Vacancy, I had a casting director, right? So I'm starting to cast Disclosure. We'd done the table read. Now I'm going, okay, I want to cast this for real because we're going to go film it. I had $15K. It was expensive, but 2-day shoot for $15K, not the worst thing in the world. It's a decent amount of budget. Let's go film this thing. So I contacted a casting director out of Denver. That casting director had to drop out due to some health issues. And because Maya had been so helpful in helping me cast the table read and had done such a good job at it, I was like, hey, Maya, would you be willing to help us cast this film? So in this case, the principle that I'm bringing up here, and I appreciate shout out to Modern Mouse from the video yesterday saying that this was really helpful for him to understand, because I think it is kind of helpful. Sometimes if you need a casting director, if you know people who have a skill set in understanding who's a good actor or actress in your area, bring them on board and ask them if they can be your casting director. And that's what I did with Maya. I said, Maya, you clearly know how to do casting. You know how to do self tapes. You know how to instruct other people in how to do self tapes. Maya teaches people how to do self tapes and teaches people how to do callbacks. So you clearly know this process. You have a really good meter for knowing whether or not people are good. Those are two critical things that I need from a casting director. Would you be a casting director for Disclosure? And she said, yeah, I would totally do that. That sounds cool. So she went out to all of the agencies in Colorado and started asking them to let their actors and actresses know that we were going to record, that we were going to film this short film. And I put in a little message that I had a little note that said, like, hey, look, like, we're really looking forward to casting this. It's going to be almost all Colorado cast and crew. We had a few people from out of state, but very few. And our last film, No Vacancy, won a bunch of awards. So we're really looking to meet new people in this area. So, there's a little bit of director's message that goes along with Maya's message to try and get people to audition. And Maya also reached out to specific people, either people from our table read that I thought were really good for the role that they played in the table read, or people who I thought, hey, you were really good in the table read, but I see you in this other role instead. And we reached out to all of them and asked them to audition as well. Most of them did. And then we went through a normal casting process, right? Submit your self-tapes. From those self-tapes, we'll pick exactly who we think should be in each role. We'll ask them to come to us for a Zoom callback. So they were still performing the same scene or a different scene. If we felt like they would be better for a different role, we would watch those, and then we would make our selections from there. And each one of these things came with we were paying our actors, and we were paying SAG. It was not a SAG project, but we were paying SAG rates because I like to keep that equitable. And we got really good people. So let me share my screen and I'll show you some of the people and show you why I was so excited to cast them in the film. And I'm just going to start from the beginning because the beginning showcases most of the characters. Okay, so this is Jeffrey Bigger. Jeffrey Bigger plays Dr. Alan Townsend. And Townsend's basic description was that he looked like sort of Mr. Rogers character. He looked like Mr. Rogers, except that he was had gained was 50 pounds heavier and wasn't personality wise like Mr. Rogers at all. He was very abrasive, whereas Mr. Rogers is obviously very affable. And so Jeffrey Bigger, who's an amazing actor, by the way, if you're in Colorado and you need a phenomenal actor, Jeffrey is killer. There's not a bad performance, in my opinion, in this whole film. I'm sure if you watch, you can come up with your own opinions for all of them. I had one person say, "Oh, I love this film, except for I don't like the acting." And I thought to myself, "Well, most people say they love the acting, so everything is subjective. Do with that whatever you want." But Jeffrey Bigger has a background in theater acting, but I will say that he really has a way of dealing with the camera in a way that I think is very effective. So phenomenal job of casting here. But Jeffrey was at our table read, and he read for the general, who you're going to see in a minute. The general is like the very buttoned up sort of gentleman who is going to tell you how it is, right? Like that kind of character. And Jeffrey read for that character, and I could tell that Jeffrey was insanely talented. And I thought, you know what? He's good as the general, and he can play the general, but I feel like that he might actually be able to chew this other role up a little bit better. So we cast Jeffrey for that role. He did an audition for the general. He did an audition for Dr. Townsend as well, and then we had him call back for both. And then at the end of the callback session, I really was gravitating towards casting him as Dr. Alan Townsend. And so I asked him, I said, which of these roles do you resonate with a little bit more? Like, which of these roles do you kind of feel like might be more something you'd like to get into? And he said, I like Townsend a little bit better. And we had some really, really good auditions for Townsend. There were other performers who did a fantastic job. But I really liked Jeffrey's take on it. So we ended up casting Jeffrey as Townsend. And in another video, on another one of these filmmaker brunch sessions, I'll talk about how I work with the actor once we've cast them, because there's some specific things I like to do with them if they want to, that I'll talk about. And Jeffrey took full advantage of that, which was awesome. But I'll talk about that in another video. Next up on the docket is Kelly Forrester. Kelly plays Dr. Elizabeth Shire. Dr. Elizabeth Shire is actually based on a couple of real life people. And so that made the casting a little bit more specific. We were looking for a little bit more specific of a person because I had those people in my head. Kelly had also been a part of our table read, but also read for a different role. She was reading for there's a role later on in the film where it's just a voiceover role. And Kelly had played that role in the table read. And Kelly and I had a chance to talk about this role, Dr. Shire, and how it was inspired, like who it was inspired by. So Kelly did something very smart in our auditions. She went and watched that person, watched her manner, several people, but one in particular, watched her mannerisms, watched how she did things, watched how she spoke, and she brought that to the table and killed it. So it was easy to cast Kelly in this role because she knew exactly what we were looking for, and she was able to pull it off, which is awesome. Now, Art was one that was not at our table read because he's from Colorado, operates in Colorado, but was not in our area. And he had auditioned for a different role, though. And he did a really good audition for that role. But I had this role for a priest, and I wanted the priest. I like having a diverse cast. It's not because it's some sort of virtue signal or something like that. What I like about diversity in casting is that I like that it gives different people with different perspectives a chance to participate in the story in a way that could create additional conflict. Because if you have lots of different perspectives, it inherently creates more conflict. It can. Sometimes it doesn't. So you got to be careful. But that's why I like diversity in projects. And I really liked the way that Art Razzo is the actor. I really liked the way he had a take on a different character. He was auditioning for Peter Rockford, but I also really thought, it'd be really cool if Art would audition for us for Father Alvarez, because I think he would be really good at Father Alvarez. Art was phenomenal at Father Alvarez. I love his performance as Father Alvarez, and some of the stories that Art tells about how he prepared for this performance are phenomenal. So really enjoyed working with Art, and glad he joined the project as well. But he was cast not from the table read like Kelly and Jeffrey, but brand new, which was cool to meet him too. Brett Darling is this character right here. This character was the most difficult. I said yesterday in yesterday's Filmmaker Brunch live show, I said that I said it wasn't a disaster, but we actually did not cast who we wanted to. So this film, I don't know if you can tell so far, but this film is a period piece. It takes place in the 1960s. And because of that, it does limit your choices for casting a little bit, because it's about aliens, it's about UFOs, it's about paranormal phenomena, and you have to ask yourself, well, who in the 1960s was highly involved in these kinds of circles? And so that limits, because some people weren't involved in those kind of circles, and it limits your ability to have an authentic story and tell a story in that time period. Well, this role, which is the Cyril Bloom role, originally was named Cyril Ng because we were going to cast an Asian actor to play this particular role. But the disaster, it wasn't really a disaster, but the complication that we ran into was that we had one actor who was Asian that auditioned, and he resonated with another role a little bit more. Still a great performer. But That's it. We didn't have anybody else. Like in Colorado, that's not a demographic profile that we were able to find. So we had to think to ourselves. And by the way, not a single person auditioned for the serial role. Even Brett, he auditioned for the Peter Rockford role instead of auditioning for the serial role. Now, when we saw his audition, we thought, well, let's call back these people, but let's call them back for a different role. This is why, if you're an actor, you get called back for different roles, because we, as the people who are trying to tell this story, can go, oh, I see something there that could be actually for this other role. That's why that happens, because when you're seeing all of these people come through, you're seeing a lot of really really good performances, and you're going, oh, I'd like to work with them. Can I fit them into a different place on the board? So Brett came in. Brett did a great job. We asked him to audition for Cyril instead, because we didn't have anybody that fit the description of what Cyril was, and so we ended up casting Brett, and he does a phenomenal job. The next one on the list is Bobby Lee Black, and Bobby Lee Black plays the general. And Bobby Lee Black, you might recognize him from, he was in WCW. He was a wrestler for a while. Super cool guy to work with. Really enjoyed working with him. He was not part of our table read, but from the very first moment you saw him auditioning as the general, you're like, I think this is the guy. Like, he just seems like the general so much that it was a little bit easier from that perspective. And then last but certainly not least, Jamal Curry as Agent Riker, and he had been in our table read, and he killed it in the table read. So that was easy. It was like he was in the role in the table read. We saw him do that role in the table read. He was great at it. Let's cast him in the show as well. He had great auditions. It was fantastic. We had a lot of really good auditions for the Riker role and for the Rockford role. So it was very hard to choose, but it worked out pretty good. Now, I want to fast forward because there are more characters who appear just a little bit later in this. Here we go. So we have two characters here. I'm going to fast forward a little bit more because you don't see Fabian's face there. The other role that we cast was these two roles right here. So this is Katie Medved and Fabian Brunetti, and they are playing two of the lead characters, two of the lead agents that are dealing with these folks. And so they both do a great job. Katie, I knew that we needed somebody. This was a difficult casting decision, to be honest. And the reason why it was difficult was because in the script, Peter Rockford, this character here, in the script, Fabian's character, is in his 50s, or at least late 40s. But Fabian is not. Fabian's a pretty young guy. However, Fabian nailed the audition so much that we actually adjusted some of the script a little bit and adjusted the character in our minds, because we needed somebody who came off as like bordering on arrogant versus confident. And for whatever reason, Fabian just nailed that. He just nailed it right off the top. And that changed who we could cast for Katie's character, right? For Audrey. This is Audrey. Because in the script, you have an older guy, a slightly younger woman. The guy has been doing this job for a long period of time. The woman has been doing this job for a little bit less, but is very dedicated to it and very good at the job. And so you have this dynamic of this guy being kind of laissez-faire about the job and her being really dedicated to the job because she really cares about it. And there's like this tension between the two of them. Well, it's weird to put a younger guy in that role talking to somebody who's older than him. It just felt like it was like the dynamic was too different. And so what I had to do was we had to limit our choices. We had so many good Audrey auditions. There were just lots of really good Audrey auditions. But we had to figure out, like, well, how does this dynamic still stay in place when we have a much younger actor? So they have to feel like they're at least a similar age, and yet he still has to feel like he is more seasoned in the role. And that limited who we could cast, because we had some other people in the roles, and I'm like, wow, they're really good. But when you compare them to the actor and the scene and the tension we're trying to create between the two characters, it just doesn't work as well. So I think it's really important that when you think about casting, when you're an actor, for example, you don't know all these things are going on behind the scenes, right? Like, you don't know that this is how this is working. And so when you're an actor, you're not putting on the same hats that we're putting on in our director producer seats. How did we get such good people? In my opinion, you can make your own assessment. I think we got really good people because we did a table read. We had a strong script that people really liked and the actors really wanted to participate in it. Yes, we had No Vacancy as a prior calling card, and yes, it did win some awards. But one of the best things was being able to find Maya, and we actually gave Maya producer credit afterwards because she just did so much for us, which is awesome. But Maya brought in, I know the local filmmakers. I'm going to talk about the crew that we got next, and Maya was huge in helping us find the right crew as well. So she knew all the people that we should be talking to, and she knew the agencies that she could go to ask for people to audition from. So Maya was the thing that made this casting so much better, was having her on board. So a huge shout out to Maya. But those are some of the tips and tricks that we used in casting Disclosure. Hopefully those are valuable for you if you're looking at casting a film. But if you have any questions, leave those questions down below. I'm trying to do a live show every single weekday. I'm calling it the Filmmaker Brunch. I know we're more at lunchtime now. Some of you are getting ready to leave work probably. But if you have questions about how we create some of these things, and things that we've done that have worked and things that we've done that have not worked, leave those down in the comments below because it'll turn into future shows and I'll call you out on those future shows. So leave me a comment and let me know. In the meantime, that's the Filmmaker Brunch for today. Stay tuned. I got more stuff to talk about tomorrow, how Maya helped us find a crew and an awesome crew, and talk a little bit about filming on iPhone this week too, because filming on iPhone was a really unique experience and it was good. And I think it worked really well for what we were trying to accomplish. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. In the meantime, go make a cool film. Bye.